Sausage.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Attack the Backlog, the podcast where I, Mark Kuznez, tries to make a dent in their backlog one game at a time. This episode is all about Batman Arkham Origins, a game I originally thought was going to be a second run, but then I loaded it up and realized I barely played it at all. I had a save file that was about 2% complete, and I believe I had one achievement unlocked. So, in actuality, I barely played any of the game, and this became more of a realization as I started playing it and didn't remember anything that was going on. So, much to my surprise, I ended up with another Attack the Backlog game as opposed to a second runs game. So, that's all explanation. That's all the explanation you need there. So this is Attack the Backlog and not second runs. The beginning of my backlog journey with the Arkham games. I already completed Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, now Arkham Origins. I have Blackgate next, then Arkham Knight, then Gotham Knights, then Suicide Squad. So the journey is only about halfway complete. And I probably would say even less so because I think the games only get longer from here. But as someone who has never played Arkham Origins, coming to it fresh after just replaying Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, I had a very good time with the game. I did some weird things that I'll get to, but off of my initial impression, having just finished the game, I easily put it at number 2. It's important to know, 1, I already played the previous 2 games. 2, I think it was bad, but you could say that this should have also affected Origins. I think it was bad of me to replay, or even if I was playing them for the first time. Playing these games back to back to back, you get kind of exhausted of them because it is more of the same essentially. The games just get bigger. City is just more. It's more, and in my opinion, not better in any way. And Origins is more the same, but it's weird because it's a bigger game than City in terms of its campaign, in terms of its story, negating any type of additional side missions and whatnot. It took me a little bit longer. It's so far the longest game. Maybe close to 10 hours or so. But it doesn't have as much side stuff to do as City. City was just overflowing with all this extra stuff that you could do. And I think that's why a lot of people put that as their number 1, because it is really feeding those Batman Superman fans. Did I say Batman Superman fans? God. I'm going to die. Oh, God. I'm sorry. I did throw this fan on too. But I think it was feeding those Batman Super fans incredibly well with all these side content that was more substantial than it didn't really exist at all in Asylum. And in Origins, what I've experienced so far is really just more additional collectible type stuff. So I initiated the Riddler, or in this case, since it is the Origin, Enigma's little thing of going around and now interrogating these gang leader dudes and just going around getting what information I can so that I can go back to his home base and unlock the door and get through and do whatever I would be doing. You also don't have any additional characters to play as in the main story, so there are no Catwoman sections, but there is Harley Quinn. It's Harley Quinn, right? That's how you say her name? Because I just found out when I was playing this, and someone in the Twitch chat when I was playing it said, "Oh, Harleen." I'm like, is her first name Harleen? Is that just her given name and everyone calls her Harley Quinn? Because again, if you've not watched the previous episodes of second runs for the Arkham games, I am not a huge Batman fan. In that I have not read a lot of the comics. I've read maybe 5 graphic novels, Killing Joke, Dark Knight. No, I think I read The Long Halloween. Hush is the one I didn't read. That's a big one. And then I read, I think, what is it? Is the Dark Knight Batman Year One. I read that. And I've seen all the movies, watched the animated series. And that's the extent of my knowledge. So a lot of the deeper cuts, which showed up on the animated series, I'm sure, I just don't have the best memory of it. I haven't watched the animated series since I was a kid. And it wasn't my number one show. That is Ninja Turtles. So my knowledge is limited. That said, I don't know where I was going with any of that. But I really like just a complete distraction. We should probably get notes when I do these things. It'd probably be good to have some bullet points, especially for these bigger games where it's like, hey, hit the gameplay, hit the story, do. So we're just going to act like I was going somewhere and I got there and we're moving on. So one of the things I really like about Origins compared to Arkham Knight, that's not the game I played, Arkham City, all these fucking, it's just Arkham City, or it's just, I'm me. But one of the things I liked about it over City was the story and the cast of villains up until a point. So one of my critiques of the second game, City, was one, how short the story was, but all the Penguin stuff didn't work for me. I liked the Mr. Freeze stuff. I didn't like the Catwoman stuff. And then falling back onto Joker yet again, and also the Ra's al Ghul. None of the story of City really did much for me. And I got annoyed by falling back on Joker. And I really liked that there was no Joker in Origins until there was. And that's when the story kind of lost me a little bit. I really liked having these lesser known characters, some of which I have never heard of. We had Black Mask and then his group of B-tier characters, sans, I guess, Deathstroke, Deadshot. I don't know where they would fall, but I don't even remember them being in the game. But then you have Copperhead, who reminded me of the lizard poison lady from the Wolverine movie. You have the Electrocutioner, who I found very funny, and I'm curious if in the comics and every other appearance of his, he's always treated as an absolute bumbling, idiot, worthless villain who is just a joke. Because when you first meet him in the game, you punch him once, he's knocked out cold. Just a complete garbage boss fight. You think, oh, this is going to be a big old boss fight. One punch, he's down. What, am I playing Ong Bak? What's going on here? And then the next time you come across him and they have a little cutscene, you think, oh, we're going to actually have a real fight with him. And then I think, is it Bane or Joker knocks him out a window and then he just falls to his death? It's like, there's no way this is unintentional. And this has to be a common thing with the Electrocutioner, who is just Batman's B-tier shocker, Spider-Man's shocker. But then you also had your boss fight with Deathstroke, which I liked. One of the things that became weird for me is that I played on normal, and when asked if I wanted hints on, I said no, assuming those meant hints regarding puzzles and stuff of that nature. Because all it says in the description is something along the lines of turn on or off little tips and prompts. And it doesn't specify that includes counter prompts. So by turning off hints, I turned off the counter. I didn't turn off the counter system. I turned off counter prompts. So I had no visual aid to know when to counter. This wasn't a huge problem, but it became a kind of a problem in some boss fights and in certain cinematics where a cinematic plays out and then at the end of it, you need to counter or you'll die and then have to reload the last save. And that was a little bit annoying. But I think either, because I don't know what the other hints would be, there has to be 2 settings, one for just straight up hints and then one for the counter system. Or in the description, specify that this includes counter prompts. Don't just say prompts. I'm not just supposed to assume that's what you mean, because I don't think of counter prompts as gameplay mechanic and system and something that makes it a bit more accessible is a hint. I don't look at counter prompts as a hint. Maybe that's just me. So maybe it's on me. But I thought and think that is a weird way of describing them. Delineation, whatever. So I played the entire game without counter prompts. And it wasn't too bad. It also became clear that the game, in certain situations, really wanted me to counter at the right time. Not brute force, not just mash the counter button in boss fights and stuff like that. Deathstroke really comes to mind. That is really trying to beat the counter system and timing into you. And I like that boss fight when I settled in and got through that. It's probably, I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite boss fight. The one with Firefly was all right, but I was maybe a little bit annoyed by the time I got to the Firefly fight because I thought the Copperhead boss fight was incredibly annoying. It does do what I really hate. The Bane boss fights did this as well, and I found those incredibly annoying and tedious. I hate in any game where the way they increase the challenge of a boss fight is by throwing in a bunch of regular enemies at you at the same time. So you have to deal with all these regular enemies who are coming at you while you're also dealing with the boss. That shit annoys the hell out of me, and I don't like it. I wish games wouldn't do that. I think that is just lazy design that, again, doesn't make, well, it technically makes boss fights more challenging, but not through creative design, unique design, etc. It makes them more challenging through tedium, through annoyance, and every negative attribute you could throw at it. So I didn't really like any of the boss fights. They just bugged the crap out of me for the most part. I did appreciate that at least in some, you would get midway saves. So there'd be multiple waves, multiple stages of a boss fight, like with Bane, where you would be in one area, then you get knocked down to another area, and it would save at a roughly middle point. So I like that at least. It made the annoyance slightly less. But I like the gameplay overall. And I think not having the counter system was a benefit because you don't have that visual clutter that is always shown up there. So you really have to then as well learn the counter system, get good at it, see the tells of enemies without this very large, prominent, light blue, white icon that shows up when an enemy is going to attack you. And it feels good. And it ends up looking a little bit nicer. The detective mode stuff in the game is a bit more interesting, but still very, very linear and kind of just a waste of time where you don't really feel like a detective through most of it because you're just interacting with one specific point in a designated space that is highlighted, that is clearly here. It's in red. Go stare at it, get a bit of exposition, then move on to the next red highlighted area, focus on it, get some more exposition. And then the way they make it a bit more interactive is eventually when you're looking at these crime scenes, you'll have to rewind the scene and get to a point where the next red highlighted thing is there for you to interact with, which gives you something to do, but I would have either wanted those to just be straight up cutscenes or do something more with it. Make it feel like I'm actually investigating an area. Have everything that I can interact with available right from the start, and I'm trying to piece everything together. I know it's kind of weird when you're not going to have that as a main mechanic of the game to implement some kind of complex system where you are finding a bunch of clues and then you're going into the menu and then attaching them together like in more mystery-based games where you'll get all your evidence and then you are taking strings and attaching things and finding what links to what and so on. You don't really want to invest too much time in putting that into a game where you're not going to be using it often. I get that. But then don't bother putting it in this very bare bones, nothing of a system is where I fall on that. I think the fact that this is Origins is cool. It's a little hard to get used to at first, especially coming right off of City and Asylum, where everyone is not really aware of who I am, because this is one of his first forays, one of his first big things in the city, kind of his coming out party, I would assume. You have Gordon, who's not the commissioner yet, and very, very young, no gray hairs, a very young Barbara. Again, Riddler's not even the Riddler yet. You have the Croc, who is so much smaller. He's so much smaller. I do like the designs as well. And again, going back to the characters, I do like them. I think that's where I fell off when I was talking about the Joker and stuff. But I like that in here, we have a smart Bane. I think that it's very easy for a lot of Bane interpretations to just focus on him as muscle and just big old dumb muscle. But in something like The Dark Knight Rises or in here, you get him not only being big and strong, but also smart. And that makes him much more imposing and intimidating antagonist, someone who can beat Batman both physically and mentally. Because he's the one who figures out Batman's true identity in Origins. And I like the fact that because this is a young Bruce Wayne, a young Batman, he is a bit more unhinged. His emotions aren't as in check. So he gets angry and loses his cool in situations like when he finds out that Bane has figured out his true identity. He doesn't take it well. And I like that aspect to him. But going back to the whole Joker thing, I don't like that eventually the Joker shows up. He's now Black Mask. I don't know if he was always Black Mask. But when he showed up, I think I started to realize it either because of hints the game was throwing at me, or because I remembered that there was a thing with this game where Mark Hamill wasn't coming back and Tony, not Tony Shalhoub. Tony, is it even Tony? Toby? Troy. It's not hits either. It's Troy Baker, not Tony Baker. Tony. Hey, Tony Baker. Where Troy Baker was the voice of Joker. And I think he does a good job. At first, I didn't love what he was doing, and I think maybe it's because he was still playing this. I'm the Joker, but I'm also Black Mask. So when I'm Black Mask, I'm playing that character, and I'm trying to hide it. But there's a little bit that seeps through every now and again, and then he kind of comes into the character, settles into the character well over time. But I just don't love that the story yet again falls back on Joker. I don't mind him being in every Batman iteration, everything as just this background things, kind of like how they handle the Riddler. Keep him in the Arkham games if you want as this agent of chaos, so you can have random occurrences happening in the map, in the world, where real big shit is going on, and it's because of him, where his gang is doing something or whatever. But him being the main driving force of all these games on the antagonist side is starting to annoy me a bit. And I'm hoping that in Arkham Knight, this isn't the case, and maybe he is just kind of a random agent of chaos that pops up here and there, but he's not the driving force of the game, because Batman has the greatest cast of villains, and I want to see them used more. I would like to see, like, for instance, with City, if Freeze was more of a prominent character. I don't know if you'd make him the main antagonist with what they did with him in the story, if that would really work. But just, why always the Joker? Why is it always got to be the Joker? Just make it the Doctor dude. Well, is it Doctor Strange? Not that Doctor Strange, but DC's Doctor Strange. I just get a little frustrated with that. But the game itself too, I like the fact that, going back on what I said earlier, it is, I guess you would call it linear, even though it is yet another open world, but a different part of it. Because I think I talked about in City where I was curious, is Gotham just really small? Is it just sort of like a borough of New York? Is that what it comparison would be? But now I'm thinking maybe Gotham is like a New York and we were just in a borough, a specific borough in City, and now we're in a different borough in Origins. I like the fact that while it is still this open world game, it is a more linear game in terms of the story, and it doesn't do what I fucking hated from City and send you to some specific location to progress the story and then say when you get there, oh, actually, you can't get in here because this door's locked or this thing needs to be done. So actually, go back over here, go do this other shit first, and then come back here, and it'll be good. It's like, I know why you didn't tell me this before, because I wouldn't have known that I needed to do this until I got here, but that design is really just there to pad out the game to me, and it was still so short. And you don't have that here. You also have a fast travel system, which is very, very nice. You have to unlock the fast travel points, which is fine. I don't mind that, but the fact that there is a fast travel system is great. The combos and unlockables of items, all pretty comparable to the past games. Instead of having a freeze grenade thing, freeze little button thing like in City, you now have a glue grenade, which works essentially the same way. You throw that in water, creates a platform. You throw that on gas events, closes them up for you. So they managed to find ways of giving you the same tools without giving you the same tools. Instead of having your little zip line machine, which I liked, you now have the ability to create not tangles. You create, what is it? Like a Just Cause, because that's the game fucking Living Large kept bringing up. Tethers. So you can tether 2 points together, and you can do that with enemies. I never did it with enemies. But you can use that, and I didn't like that system. That gadget wasn't my favorite. But I really liked with the combat upgrade, something that was in Arkham City, but I didn't realize, because I think the way I remember in Arkham Origins, you get to see all of the upgrades you'll have access to, and you know the tree you have to follow to get there, and nothing is hidden unless it's a gadget that you haven't found yet or unlocked yet. I like the UI and the way that's set up, as opposed to City, which is just a bunch of icons, and it felt very cumbersome to look at. But something that was in City and is in here is the ability to, when you build up your combo meter, you have combo moves you can do to take down an enemy without having, like, it's an instant takedown, so on and so forth. And one of them is the ability to immediately knock everyone who's on the ground dizzy, unconscious. You jump up in the air and then you throw batarangs at, I don't know if there's a limit to the number of enemies. I think my max was 4 at once. And that is so useful in fights against a dozen plus enemies, because those can be very, very difficult to deal with, especially later in the game when you're fighting against ones with shields again and guns and shock sticks and so on. I hate the shielded enemies so much, because I don't know if you can glue down the shields or something, but the fact that you deal with them and they're just a pain to deal with when you're in big fights because you can't counter them, to my knowledge. So you have to get them to drop the thing, as opposed to other enemies with a knife or so on. You can counter them. I don't know if you can counter the shock dudes, but I just hate that people pick up the shields so fast. There's barely any time between getting someone to drop it and having some other idiot pick it up. But that combo move is so useful. I really like the game. The boss fights gave me some annoyance, and I think part of it, or maybe a very significant part of it, is because I have the counter hints turned off, not on purpose. I never went in and turned hints on to see if that was the reason. I just said to myself, oh, maybe they don't exist in this game, to give it a bit more challenge. Maybe they're only on easy mode. And I left it at that. But overall, it's a really good game. I think it's an underappreciated game. I definitely put it above City. I think it is easily better than City. Unless you really are a Batman diehard. I think the gluttony of stuff to do, all the Riddler trophies, and the various side missions, City feels like the Batman Superfans game. Arkham Asylum feels like the Batman Arkham game for fans of good game design. That's gonna get a lot of hate, I'm sure. People are gonna be like, what are you trying to say? But come on. Arkham Asylum is the best in terms of game design. Let's just call it what it is. You can say, no, I like having all the extras. You can like having more and having an open world thing, but come on, we all know the truth. And I think Arkham, what I like about Origins is that I think it takes a lot of what City does and just focuses it. It kind of Arkham Asylums it in the best way it can, given its open setting. And I really like that. Very, very good game. Better overall boss fights than Arkham City as well. I really hated the Raj Al Ghul stuff and anything with but it was nice. It was a nice little time. And I don't know what else there is to say about it other than I liked it. And probably the last thing to say, which is telling, especially if you've watched the City episode, is that when I finished City, I was done with the game. I immediately just quit it and deleted it. Didn't want to bother with any of the collectibles or any of that jazz. And after I beat Arkham Origins, I spent an hour just going around the city, going after collectibles, dabbling with some side mission stuff, and cleared out one area of collectibles and stuff of that nature, which is something I would not be against doing more of, but I want to move on to Blackgate. I want to finally get to Night, which is the big one I've been waiting for so long. So that is where I'll leave this here episode of Attack the Backlog, all about Batman Arkham Origins. Next up is Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate, side-scrolling Metroidvania-ish. I'm not exactly sure what kind of game it is, but I'm very curious to find out. But for now, that'll do it for this here episode of Attack the Backlog. Once again, I am Marcus Nez. Y'all can find me pretty much everywhere at PX Sausage. If you enjoyed this here show or any of the stuff I do and what have you, you can support me and my nonsense over at patreon.com/PXS. There you can get access to a monthly Q&A, the occasional watch party, a private Discord channel along with some fancy Discord roles, and the occasional drop on the Patreon here or there depending on your tier. Or you could just support me to support me if that is your fancy. In addition to the Patreon, you can find links to the site, the YouTube, the Discord, and the Twitch, and so much more over at pxsausage.com. That is the letter P, the letter X, sausage.com. But that is it. That is all. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I hope you enjoyed this here episode, and I hope you have both a wonderful rest of your day. I don't do that here. I just say that because I always forget what show is what. I just hope y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. But for now, adios, arrivederci, Batman.
It's go time.